A lot of the footage in this documentary was shot at the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the space in 1997 at the Baxter Theatre in Cape Town. The space actually opened its doors on the 28th of March of 1972. And I think it's important to know what the state of the country was like under the repressive apartheid government of the time. The Public Registrations Act of 1950 was in place, and that classified the various peoples of South Africa, the various races, for example, into whites, Bantu, which are blacks, of course, and coloreds, people of mixed race, and eventually Asians as well. Allied with this was the Group Areas Act. In the same year, the Group Areas Act of 1950 was passed, which stated that whites could live anywhere in South Africa, but the other groups were designated certain areas in which they could live. They could not move out of those areas in order to find work or run a business or own land. And this, in company with two other acts called the Land Acts, provided a situation where it was established that the white South African minority, in fact, owned more than 80% of South Africa. Later came the Immorality Act, which prevented sexual intercourse between the various races, mainly black and white, and the police hunted down and hounded anybody who was suspected of transgressing this particular act. I'm going to quote from a publication published in 1996 titled Jacobson's Index of Objectionable Literature. I'll repeat that. This is a quote from a publication published in 1996 titled Jacobson's Index of Objectionable Literature. In order to enforce the segregation of the races, laws were passed forbidding most social contact between races, authorizing segregated public facilities, establishing separate educational standards, restricting each race to certain types of jobs, and of course, denying non-whites the rights to vote. The cruel regime of racism in South Africa was upheld by an elaborate system of banning, an efficient tool in suppressing all kinds of opposition, coupled with lying, persecution, torture, and killings. In effect, the apartheid regime affected every aspect of social, political, and cultural life in South Africa. In 1967 came the Publications and Entertainment Act. And this act gave the government the right to ban any publication or play or whatever on grounds of obscenity or blasphemy or harmfulness to the government or prejudice or whatever they wished. In Brian Astbury's book on the space, the name Orestes appears in the dedication. Orestes was a play which was written by Athol Fugard and supposed to be performed, and was in fact performed, at the Cape Abel State Theatre there. Athol, together with Val Donald and Wilson Dunster and Yvonne Bryceland, rehearsed in just an ordinary commercial room in a Union Castle building, I think. And Brian Astbury attended two of these rehearsals. He watched the play being workshopped and later saw a couple of performances. And he realized that theatre could be made without the extravagant trappings of sets and lights and so on. And that his dream of actually starting a theatre was not impossible. The Space Club was formed in order to circumvent the possibility of the banning of plays. And much of what was performed at the Space was eligible for banning, and many of them were banned. There were a number of audience members, some of them lawyers, who were very loyal to the space, and with their help, which they gave free, they found a loophole in which they suggested that a club should be formed, and audience members could join the club, and it then would become a private performance, and anybody could come, all races or creeds or whatever, and they could do nothing about banning it. The club was started by Gloria Brody, who was fundraising at the time, and later on passed on to Moira Fine, who with an iron hand took over that club, and I think that without Moira Fine and the Space Club, the space would never have been able to achieve what it finally did achieve. Brian Astbury was undoubtedly the driving force behind the space with Yvonne Bryceland. Athol Fugard was the man who influenced, interested, and attracted attention from the media, because he was already then a well-established playwright. And so the space got a great deal of publicity, and which was very useful. And we were able to start off with very good audiences right from the start. Athol, unfortunately, was unable to attend the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the space back in 1997, because he was busy overseas with other projects. And I wrote him, I faxed him and said, would he please send us a message? And this is what he wrote, and which was then repeated on the night, on that very emotional night of that space celebration. Percy, dear friend, herewith my message for the space anniversary. If there is one single event in South African theatre during the apartheid years on which it can be safely said, the theatre of the new South Africa is being built, it is unquestionably the foundation of the Space Theatre in Cape Town by Brian Astbury and Yvonne Bryceland. That single event, with its inspiring vision of a theatre of defiance and decency, with its invitation to theatre artists to abandon the ossified forms of the past and to liberate themselves and their work, is the cornerstone to all subsequent and proud achievements of our theatre. Speaking for myself, I say unhesitatingly that my debt to the Space Theatre, to the stunningly unique talent of Yvonne Bryceland and the vision of Brian Astbury, is one of the major ones of my career in theatre. The anniversary of that brave and successful experiment deserves to be celebrated by the whole country. I will dedicate my performance on the day of the anniversary to the shining memory of Yvonne and as a gesture of deep gratitude to Brian. Athol Fugard.